Okay, so we already have established that I is equal to a -1. And let's note that since there's no exponent on this I, this is really an I to the first power. So we can work our way now to understand what all of these different powers of I are going to be. Let's start with I squared. I squared is the same thing as I times I, right? We said that I is equal to the square root of -1, so this is the same thing as the square root of -1 times the square root of -1. And the square root of -1 times the square root of -1 is going to give me -1. So I squared is equal to -1. How about I to the third power? Well, that is going to be I squared times I, right? Because we would just add the exponents. We said that I squared is equal to a -1 times I. And so -1 times I would be equal to a negative I. I to the fourth. It's going to be the same thing as I squared times I squared. I squared is equal to -1, so we have -1 times -1. And -1 times -1 is going to be a +1. I to the fifth. It's going to be the same thing as I to the fourth times I to the first. And we just said that I to the fourth was equal to a +1. So we have a +1 times I. And so that gives us a positive I again. We're going to see that there's a pattern. So we'll keep going through these, but you won't have to do it this way every time. So I to the sixth is going to be equal to I to the fourth times I squared. We know that I to the fourth is equal to a +1, and then I squared is a -1. So what are we going to end up with? +1 times -1 is a -1. I to the seventh is the same thing as I to the fourth times I to the third. I know that I to the fourth is a +1, and I know that I to the third is a -I from up here. So 1 times the -I is going to equal a -I. All right, and our last one, I to the eighth is the same thing as I to the fourth times I to the fourth. And that's going to be equal to a +1 times a +1, and that equals +1. So let me fill in the top up here. We already said that I to the first, well, if we just fill in I to the first is going to be equal to just a +I. Then I can use all these values and fill in this chart over on the left. So +I is the same thing as, or I to the first, I should say, is the same thing as just a +I. I squared is going to be a -1. I to the third is going to be a -I. I to the fourth, +1. And now you're going to see the pattern just repeat itself again. I to the fifth is going to be a +I. I to the sixth is going to be a -1. I to the seventh is going to be a -I, and I to the eighth is going to be a +1. All right, in the next section, we're going to show you how to calculate these powers without even using this table. It's all about memorizing that pattern. I, -1, -1, -I, +1. I, -1, -I, +1. What do you think I to the ninth would be? Maybe it would repeat again, and it would be back to a regular I. So next section, we'll show you some more on this.